Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight on a rainy evening, though I don't think any of us are going to be too sad to see a little bit of rain. It's been really hot and dry, and I think we are technically under a drought watch, so rain is good. I want to acknowledge and thank Alderwoman Katie Nash, who is here this evening as well, joining us here at this Legislative Priorities Town Hall. We kicked off our city's budget process in January with a similar town hall structure, and we had not really done something like that before, but we liked the way it went. The turnout wasn't terrific. This is much better already than those were, and we really appreciate that. But we like this idea and this approach in terms of engagement, so we're happy that you're here with us this evening. It may seem like trying to talk about the state's budget process when the state won't actually adopt its budget until April of next year, that doing a meeting like this in July is way out in front of the process. But the truth is, when it comes to the state, you need to be this far out in front of the process in terms of the way it works. And we're going to talk a little bit about that process and why we're here this evening and want to hear from you about your legislative priorities. We have a role in the state's budget process in terms of the ask and all of the, whether it's local taxpayer dollars or state taxpayer dollar or federal taxpayer money, what we're trying to do with the local government level is trying to figure out how we can best leverage those resources back for our own community. So just because there's dollars that get sent to the state doesn't mean they have to stay in the state. They don't stay in the state. They come back and they get returned to local governments at the state, at the federal, at the county, and at the city level all over the state of Maryland. And we just want to make sure that we're participating in a process in a way that allows us to advocate for the things that are so important to our community. Historically, the city's frankly not been that engaged in trying to do our own asks on behalf of city projects. I would say that in the past, that's probably been a deficiency. And what we've really tried to step up over the last couple of years is to be more active and involved in engaging with our state delegation and the leadership on both the legislative and executive branch to make sure that when we've identified priorities important to the city of Frederick, that we're carrying them to the right people in Annapolis who can help us to achieve our objectives. And in most instances, we're talking about really large projects where that state dollar being leveraged into that project becomes really important. A lot of the work that we've done up until now has been advocating on behalf of our nonprofit community. So our nonprofits are also part of that process in terms of submitting their own asks and requests to the state delegation for support of any number of different projects that could be happening, whether it's an expansion of a facility or building something new or adding on to a program. Often that's where we had been involved in the past, but we've really taken an effort over the last few years to step up our own asks. We are the second largest city in the state, and we do think that as a result of that place in the state that we have a role to play in being an advocate for our own needs and a leader across the state in advocating for what state government can do for municipal government. So we're really happy with the work that we do alongside our Board of Aldermen, an advocacy team that we have working for us in Annapolis, and the relationships that we have leveraged with the governor's office and with the General Assembly. I would characterize it as still a bit of a work in progress, but we are continuing to look at ways that we can improve how we do this. And as a part of this process, certainly we would welcome your feedback on this activity tonight. And as we move forward, the public suggestions on how we can better do what we do, we're always open to those conversations. So why is it important? The state funding helps us to support the critical needs that the city is identifying. And we work very closely, particularly with our delegation that represents the city of Frederick and Annapolis. That's State Senator Karen Lewis Young and our trio of state delegates, Chris Fair, Karen Simpson, and Ken Kerr. And so those relationships are really important, but these are projects that we believe drive economic development, economic opportunity. They build communities. They improve what it is that we're trying to do as a city. And as I said, often these are projects that are too big for us to tackle on our own, and we want to build those partnerships with the state in order for us to achieve what it is that we want to do. So the significant projects that we've done over many, many years in the city, if you look back to some of the largest projects that the city has ever undertaken, whether that's a major transportation project, something as transformative as the Carroll Creek Flood Control Project, the construction of Harry Grove Stadium, all of these projects get done because we have built partnerships with the state to provide support to make them happen. So how do we get the money? Where does it come from? There are a number of different avenues where the city can potentially enter the process. And one of the reasons why we want to hear from you is because depending on the kinds of things that you tell us are important to you, we might use a different method depending on what that ask looks like. So they are trying to get funding directly from the governor's office. The governor proposes the budget, very similar to the way the executive legislative function in the city of Frederick works. Every year I present a budget to the Board of Aldermen. So the first and best opportunity you have to get funding for a project that you want is to get the governor to agree that it's a priority and to put it in his budget. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be cut, but it does mean a lot to get over that first threshold and have the governor say, this is something that I support and I want to be involved in. The second area involves our delegation, and that is submitting local bond initiatives. So this is a part of the budget process where there's funding allocated to the Senate and to the House, where they're able to put money into local projects that matter to them. There's a lot of ways in which that process sometimes can be seen negatively or pejoratively, that it's a way for state officials to bring money back home, and you'll hear it referred to particularly at the federal level as pork barrel projects. These are really important projects for communities and for community development, and it is one of the roles that we want our state lawmakers to play in advocating on our behalf. So we don't look at it as a negative. It's an opportunity for us to engage with our local delegation and figure out how we make the projects that we want happen. And then there's the work that we do with various state agencies. So there's also buckets of money that are allocated every year to the various departments. And we may work with those departments in any numbers of different ways to apply for grants or other kind of funding that they may have some discretionary control over when the time comes to award that money. So we'll have some examples of some different projects that we've done and some of the different buckets that some of those have fallen into. The budget amendment process, when you get to the very end of the state's budget cycle and they're allocating funding to all the programs, there's an opportunity for us to potentially see funding secured for an amendment. Just this past year, we were able to get $250,000, $250,000 into traffic calming through a budget amendment. And so we know that speeding throughout neighborhoods in the city of Frederick is really important. We've committed to a pretty intentional program of working with neighborhoods, working with our police department and working with our traffic engineers to identify where we can put traffic calming projects that will have an impact. If you've been in the last 3 to 6 months through the intersection at South Street and South Jefferson Street, you'll see the example of the kinds of projects that we do. We've put in better pedestrian markings. We've done some road diets, narrowing of the roadway in an effort to slow people down, more impact signage and paint. It may seem like those are relatively simple projects. They do take time to engineer. We want to do them the right way, and they're not free. We do have to spend money. In some instances, if you look at that project, we had to realign curbs and build some things. Those are dollars that we have to spend in this traffic calming CIP and being able to get state support for those projects, as the state is very much on board with the Vision Zero concept as well. It just works across a number of levels of government in order to make these projects possible for our neighborhoods. So some other examples of some projects that we've been able to get funding, and these are, these large dollar projects. We got $4.25 million from the state a couple of years ago for our police headquarters project. That project in total, when you add up the construction and the land acquisition, is north of $20 to $25 million. So 4.25 is not most of the money for the project, but it is a great statement and commitment on the part of the state that a project like this has value. We've gotten support for our downtown hotel and conference center project. That was something that in prior years, we'd not had success in getting the governor's office to see this project as a priority and place the money in the budget to make it happen. When we actually did get money allocated through the General Assembly to this project a number of years ago, the money never made it to the Board of Public Works to get released, which is another step in the process. This is where having the governor's support becomes so critical. So we've got legislative support, we've got support from the executive branch, and that's resulted in $7.5 million in capital budget funding, but also we got $1 million through the Department of Housing and Community Development to support that project. So that's one of those miscellaneous grants that's available through funding that the departments have available to support projects. We are looking at improvements to our stadium in Frederick, and we had been allocated $17.5 million through a fund that was established by the General Assembly a number of years ago to do improvements at minor league baseball stadiums all over the state of Maryland. As a result of, and I won't bore you with the details of how it all works, we lost our affiliated minor league baseball team because our stadium didn't meet the standards that Major League Baseball wanted minor league facilities that they put affiliated teams into. So we were eligible to apply for this funding, and we were initially allocated $17.5 million. Breaking news, this afternoon, our understanding is that the Maryland Stadium Authority's governing body, the body that actually is looking at adding some additional funding into that project. So we're really hopeful as we look at player development improvements that we're going to see that $17.5 million, and we've gotten some good indications covering almost all of some of the costs that we're trying to accomplish there. And once we do that, the goal is to rehabilitate the stadium to the point where we're attractive again for minor league baseball to return to Frederick. We think that's one of those value adds and quality of life that makes Frederick a nice place to live. We have previously received funding, as I mentioned, for traffic calming. We've gotten a total of $750,000 over a couple of years for traffic calming projects, but we've also submitted support for state funding to support our West Side Health Center needs and the work that we want to do to expand health service access on the west side of the city of Frederick. We have been able to get some state support for our community table. We used to call it the Soup Kitchen in downtown Frederick. We're in the process of going through a rebranding on that. The community table is an important service that we're able to provide to residents in our community to make sure that there are hot meals available every day of the year for someone who needs it. And so these are projects that can bring big impact to our community, and we're grateful that we've got the state on board as a partner. These are just examples of different kinds of projects coming from different kinds of support that we're interested in hearing from the community about what it is that you're looking for in support for our community. We're here tonight to listen. So I'm using up my talking time right now. And then what we're going to do is ask anyone that wishes to provide any additional sort of public comment to us to come to the microphone and do that. We're taping this so that we can provide it to the community later on as well. In addition to asking you to sign in this morning, there was a piece of paper that you could pick up. So if you don't feel comfortable coming to the microphone, that's quite all right as well. There is a QR code, which if you scan will take you to a survey so that you can complete that questionnaire online. We have paper copies of that survey as well if the technology is not your friend. And we're here now to hear from you. So if there's anybody that wishes to talk about a project. We don't have a clock this evening, so we don't have anybody on a hard timer. But typically we like people to try and keep their remarks in a roughly 3 to 5 minute time frame, just because it ensures that everybody can be heard and we can be finished in a timely fashion. So thank you again so much for being here this evening, and we look forward to hearing the ideas that you may have about ways in which we can leverage state support for projects in Frederick. Thank you all so much.
Just like in the city meetings, I'll give my name and general address. My name is Jim Smersel. I live in Frederick, and I did fill out the questionnaire, and I basically will highlight what those are. I think it may not be a candidate for state funding, but there are some little gaps in the city's road network that I think could be filled in with either city CIP funds or developer mitigation fee funds. And two of them are the extension of 7th Street from East Church Street over to 7th Street at East Street. It's been on a comprehensive plan for years. It would basically help if connection. I understand 5th Street's going to be connected pretty soon, so 7th Street could also be connection, help fill out that grid. Also, Old Camp Road going over the Rock Creek and up to Shookstown Road. State funds would be great, but it could also be city funds. The next one's more general in that I'm a big advocate of roundabouts, and I would like to see the city undertake a study with their traffic engineers and look at places where roundabouts can be placed. Roundabouts are eco-friendly. Every minute you're sitting at a traffic light, you're spewing, pollution into the air. Sure, at a roundabout, everybody slows down, but traffic keeps moving. So I think they're ecologically sound. There could be money from both the state and also WashCog, because they have some money for air pollution control. The next one's kind of was prompted by the comment about beautification being a priority. And this is a little more than beautification, but I've noticed, and I've lived in Frederick most of my life, I've noticed in the last few years that companies, I think cable companies mostly, have really, really taken over our rights of way and put too many wires and in very bad locations, triple tiering, quadruple tiering them. And I think there could be some effort to understand better what the Public Service Commission is, what our rights are, because we do own the rights of way, and try to regularize that mess. You may not know, but the $1 million the mayor mentioned that we got for the Hotel Conference Center came from the Department of Housing and Community Development, because we had a Sustainable Communities Plan, and that Sustainable Communities Plan is called the Patrick Street Corridor, and goes all the way from East Frederick Rising to the Golden Mile. And that's kind of the ticket to getting money from DHCD if it's in that plan area. So I think there's an opportunity to maybe do some beautification, take down some wires, relocate some wires to the backs of properties rather than along the street. And the last is, I've noticed that the county government has sort of siphoned county offices out of the downtown core. Sure, we have Winchester Hall and the permitting and the treasurer, but there are some, I think, that are very important, like the Board of Elections, the Liquor Board, and State Department of Assessment Taxation that have been placed in office parks. I think it's almost criminal that a Board of Elections in a place where it's either not on a bus route or it's very difficult to get to on a bus route. But I think there's an opportunity to work with the county to bring some of those offices back into downtown if there is an infill building to be built with the reconstruction or redevelopment of the East Church Street parking deck. I've seen some plans that have a building that would span that gap between the Downtown Frederick Partnership and the next building where the little sub shop is. I gotta go in there and buy subs. That building could be a joint county building built by the city, leased to the county, or somehow, but bring some of those, I think, critical things back to town. On the initiatives, I circled that I like the urban farming. I'm not really sure if that would be changes to enabling legislation to just make it so they're easier to get through a planning process, or whether it be grants. If it's grants, that would be great, and I think nonprofits like community development organizations could use those. And also, what did I say? Statewide composting. Mayor put me on an ad hoc committee 10 years ago to look into composting. And oh, you did? Okay. Okay, that was the predecessor. I was on a study committee that looked into our composting and stuff like that, and I think it's something we can do. So thank you very much. Again, I'm a longtime resident of the city. I love Frederick City, and I hope that we can, like the mayor says, leverage as many state dollars and bring them back home as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? I see you moving. Come on up.
Katie, you want to sit up here? You sure? Okay.
My name is Joe Heverly. I live in Act 6. Actually, I'm going to start off with a question. The legislation to ban single-use plastic statewide. I'm going to sound stupid, but what's a single-use plastic?
What, plastic bags from the grocery
Plastic
store?
bags, plastic bottle, just anything that you can hold that's one. Okay.
Yeah, one
Okay.
and done's.
One and done's. Okay. Stupid question, but sometimes you have to ask them.
Cutlery straws.
I'm sorry?
Cutlery and straws also.
Okay. So what I wanted to talk about was all my number ones that I have here. The first number one, major highway infrastructure enhancements. So is there any kind of timeline on that? And I'm not trying to put you under the gun. I live off of 7th Street. I use 15 a lot. I have found myself driving through the city almost always to avoid 15.
There was funding in the Department of Transportation's budget in fiscal year 26, but because of some changes that the state made to their budget this past year, out-year funding was all zeroed out. I don't know that that means that the project is on hold indefinitely. I think they're looking at how they can fund these transportation projects across the state, and I think funding will come back into that project at some point. But it was scheduled for fiscal year 2026. Right now, there's no funding for that project construction-wise. The design, however, continues to move forward. So I would say that's a positive sign, because it's unlikely they're going to spend the millions of dollars it takes to design a widening project and then ultimately decide to take that plan and stick it on a shelf.
Okay.
I can't give you a timeline.
Fair enough. Fair enough. My other number one is streetscape and beautification. And to me, what streetscape and beautification means is when I drive down 7th Street, wow, could we make it look a little different so it doesn't look like the Ho Chi Minh Trail going down there in your car, and it doesn't curve all over the place, and it doesn't get wide and then get narrow. Are there any plans whatsoever on widening 7th Street, putting in any kind of bicycle lanes, anything of that nature at all? Because it is a major street through the city.
Yes, and in fact, so this might have kicked off sooner, but because of some of the underground water projects that we've had to do in that corridor over the last couple of years with water main breaks, it's been a good opportunity for our DPW to take a step back from a resurfacing that was supposed to be done a year to a year and a half ago, and to actually take the corridor more in total now that it is sort of that patchwork that you're describing. So our traffic engineering department is actively engaged right now in looking at some concepts for a resurfacing that would involve for Route 15 or for 7th Street from Route 15 basically to the hospital and maybe beyond to Bentz or East Street. Beautification, road diets, resurfacing, bikeways, better pedestrian cross access in some areas where we know people are crossing where there isn't a light, but that's where the road is, so they're doing what humans do. So I would expect that within the next, I don't know the time frame, I would say months probably, there'll begin to be some of those designs pushed out to the community, and there'll be community meetings similar to this one where people have an opportunity to weigh in on what they like and what they don't like. So 7th Street is definitely on the radar of traffic engineering, actively in a design review right now.
Okay, all right, thank you. My next number one was I picked the West Side Regional Park. And I assume you're talking about a park similar to a Baker Park, but only on the west side of town? Is that what you're referring to, or are we referring to baseball fields, or?
So tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, we will be having a workshop where a consultant, we worked in partnership with the Oshman Family Foundation to bring in a firm called Sports Facilities that is looking at various concepts for how that park might develop. So when that land was originally acquired back in 2008, 2009, the intention was probably something that would have been like a regional park sports complex kind of park. In the intervening 15 years, there have been some new conversations about ways in which that land can be best put to use on behalf of our residents. And so, as you know, a playground has gone in there. We've actively engaged with the National Park Service about relocation of their training center to West Side Regional Park. We are looking at installation of a Little League diamond there, but the plan tomorrow will give a little bit of concept to what could happen out there. I think we're still in the give us a good idea and give us the path to how we can fund it, and it has viability as far as West Side Regional Park is concerned. So I think it still can be a number of different things depending on what we hear from the consultants tomorrow and how the public responds to that message. 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at City Hall.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Maybe I'll just stay here for right now.
My next number one is kind of near and dear to my heart, Senior Center capital funding. Let me just say, without giving specifics, that my wife is currently going through a life-changing situation. She is, and it's not physical, it's up here. So I'm in for the ride of my life, and it won't be a nice ride at all. So I'm wondering what kind of help I can get around here, because I honestly don't know. It seems like there's a million places that tell you they can help you, and then you find out they really can't.
I'm going to actually, Frederick County does offer senior services in a more robust and comprehensive way than the city of Frederick does. Doesn't mean that we couldn't, if that was a strong desire of the community to see us put more effort into support for seniors, but that's up until this point really been a county-delivered service. The young man sitting at the end of the table can give you some contact information and can probably connect you to the Senior Services and Senior Citizens Division of Frederick County Government to hopefully get you connected to the services that you'll be looking for.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And my next number one is housing affordability. I am part of a small Rotary here within Frederick, and we have speakers come and talk about this subject all the time. And it sounds like, and not everybody can be Einstein. You know, you can't be a rocket scientist and make $2 million a year. You know, there's people that work at Walmart, there's people that work other places, they just don't make a lot of money. So how is that being addressed in the city? Because I I feel as though I've been blessed. I make a good living and I don't have to worry about it. But, you know, I see situations where people aren't so blessed. And we should, if you're as blessed as I am, you should feel damn lucky, because I would not want to be living like some of these people that I've met.
I think that is a question that we could probably take the next 3 hours and have a really robust conversation about affordable housing and maybe not even answer the question.
Yeah.
But I think of what you're saying is affordable housing, and addressing affordable housing needs to be a legislative priority both at the local and at the state level. I think I agree. I think the Board of Aldermen collectively all agrees with that as well. We're looking at a lot of different ways. It would be difficult for me to sort of walk through that chapter and verse here this evening. We can probably follow up with you with some of the things that we've been talking about and get you plugged into some of the conversations we've been having. But I can tell you that it is on our radar. It's a challenging problem. It's one that we probably won't solve by a single policy. We're going to have to do it through a series of actions and steps and programs and projects, some of which we've already done with certain low-income housing tax credit projects. But there's additional work that we're looking at in terms of code changes and our moderately priced dwelling unit ordinance and other tools that we have available. So
Okay.
it's a deeper conversation than probably what we can have here in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Not to put you off.
It sounds
But
good.
we're
that
having the
it's being
conversations.
discussed. Yeah. I mean, it sounds good that it's being discussed, because it was very eye-opening to me. I mean, you know, you live your life, and unless you specifically get exposed to something, you really don't have any idea. My very last thing is very near and dear to me in terms of driving around this city. We were talking about calming bumps and that. Over by TJ High School, where they have the calming bumps, I thought I was in an episode of, what was that old TV show, Dukes of Hazzard. Because I'm driving 25 miles an hour down the street, and all of a sudden a car is passing me, had to be going 45, somewhere like that, because he wasn't happy about me going the speed limit. So when he passed me, he went over one of those calming things. And it really seriously looked like the damn Dukes of Hazzard right beside me. And I'm like, this is insanity. So what I'm getting at is we need traffic lights, or whatever you call them, not traffic lights, what are they called? Red light camera. And we need good ones that are high tech and that can stop people from speeding, because I can tell you personally, 9 times out of 10, nothing's going to work except if it hits them right here. And I mean hit them, not $20, not $40, like 1,000 or something. Then maybe, by the grace of God, they'll stop speeding.
I'm a big advocate for automated enforcement, so I'm with you right there. There are some legislative changes that we need the state to do to allow us to put speed cameras or red light cameras in places other than where they're statutorily limited right now to within a certain distance of schools. I think there's more that we can do in this area, and it's an area that I think we can advocate for legislatively.
Yeah.
More local control.
And that incident that I'm telling you about is one of 5 that has happened to me in the past 3 months. I have literally been passed on city streets. I'm not a slowpoke by any means, trust me. I get out on the highway, I can book it. But when you're in the city of Frederick, if it says 25, it doesn't mean 40.
Thank you,
That's all
Joe.
it does. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to go to the mic?
Again, we're here to listen to you. I'll answer your questions if you have them, but I don't really think this needs to be an exchange unless that's what you want. So we're really here to hear from you.
Okay. I want to know why Fort Detrick has the priority of doing whatever they're doing, which I guess is another lane to get people in and out, over the Tuscany Drive traffic light. which is so dangerous. It
That's
really
not a
is.
Fort Detrick project, that's a City of Frederick project.
Okay.
The City of Frederick is putting in that traffic light at Tuscany Drive because people who live on
No,
Tuscany
that's not
Drive
what
and in
I
the
asked.
neighborhood. Well, they're adding, the lane addition, the work that's being done on the frontage of Fort Detrick is all necessary to add the appropriate lanes to create the right stacking so that when the traffic light goes in, it will be a much safer intersection for cars waiting to go left onto Tuscany Drive and for those vehicles coming out of Tuscany Drive that want to go either north or south.
Okay.
It's a traffic
Oh,
light is
see,
going
now I
in there.
thought they were putting in a lane or something
Nope.
because for themselves, for people to get in and
It's
out.
all for the light.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
I want to thank the city. My name is Bob Roby. I'm a citizen of the city on East 2nd Street. And with regard to major highway infrastructure enhancements, if you all aren't aware of it, the mayor's #1 priority a year ago, not speaking for him, was Route 15 improvements. And as he said, it got zeroed out in the budget. But I appreciated the efforts there, and along with the county's efforts to support that effort. But in that list, I'm a strong advocate of the city completing what they have done so far with regard to the East Street corridor. I think it's very important that we get that corridor finished, especially with the rate of growth that we have coming into our community. That is a major thoroughfare that we need to have done correctly. And the city is investing in that corridor, but I would like to see more capital improvement projects to make it happen a little bit faster. I want to also talked about growth a little bit when the mayor and the city people put together their comprehensive plan, which got adopted a couple of years ago. The rate of growth in this city during the planning cycle of that plan was 0.8%. Our current rate of growth in the region historically now for the last 3 or 4 years is 2.5%, roughly speaking. And I think there are adjustments that maybe should be considered in that plan as a result of this growth. And we should take a fresh, long-term view of how growth might impact, I want to say it's the character of our city and the livability of our city as it comes in. And I would like to see a public forum, planned public forum by which to have that handled. So I'm just recommending the city consider that option. I think the county is currently undergoing a similar operation for parts of their Livable Frederick plan. On the third one, dealing with general facilities, I'm a big fan of public art. And a few years ago, the mayor and the city, along with the county, supported public art activities and that plan that was put together for the Frederick Arts Council. And because of COVID, all the initiatives that were planned for that subject, they've gone away. They just got lost in the COVID battle. I'd like to see the city reconsider reinvesting in the public art program, along with the county. I'm a big fan of the West Side Regional Park. I just hope that happens. I'm more in support of a park for the citizens than I am a monetized park. But I'm pleased that that project's moving forward. I'm not sure. I'd like somebody to talk to what the city resident revolving loan fund is all about. I didn't have any idea of how that money might be used. But if it can be used by those people who can't afford to make some of the energy efficiency improvements to their homes, I'm for that kind of thing. So, but I don't know what the fund is for. But along that lines, the governor just came out with an executive order asking for, and actually requiring the state to come forward with a very active plan on greening our performance measures in our state. And I'm hoping that the city will support the state initiatives to moving us to our green economy. I think that's all I wanted to say tonight. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Bob.
No one else? Thank you all. Have a good night.